Thank you so much for joining us today. Well, welcome everybody to the conversation that we're having today regarding the Count Question Resolution program. I'm Janet Lilly, Assistant Vice President for Community Relations at Michigan State University. And I know that many of you probably already have, you're familiar with Kathy Hartz, who's the Portfolio Manager for the National Partnership Program for the Census Bureau. She has been gracious enough over the last 2 years. That's when we had our first census webinar. It was 2 years ago in September, and she has been gracious enough to be a very helpful and wonderful resource of information. And when I was thinking back to time, it was just a little over a year ago that our town gown communities, how could we forget? We're just strategizing about how to best accomplish accurate counts in our communities during, of course, the very unprecedented time of the pandemic. And during a time when so many university students were also leaving the college communities that they were in because their classes were going remote. And that obviously threw a lot of concerns to all of us. And so we're lucky in that the census recognized the very challenging time of trying to count people who might not be physically present. And they were flexible and they allowed for new processes and procedures to facilitate that accurate count. So the dust is settling a little bit. And now that preliminary census numbers are available, I know that many of my network and yours as well, folks are having questions, especially from town gown communities, and they're wondering if their numbers reflect an accurate population count or an undercount. I don't think anyone's talking about being overcounted, and what they might do about it. So today we're going to turn our attention to Kathy Hartz, who will provide us a very high-level overview of the CQR process. We are not intended to get into the weeds today. It's really just to give us some information to get us going and to understand how we can approach immediate next steps. So Kathy, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll ask that everyone stays muted until you're done with your presentation portion, though they can put questions in the chat and we'll go from there. But when you're finished with that, I think we can have folks unmute and ask questions as well, so we can also have a dialogue. So thank you everyone for joining us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy.
Sure. Well, thanks again for joining us, everyone. It's been quite a census like no other. And, just to reflect a little bit, when we were planning for this census, we do have volumes of procedural manuals and plans for so many different types of circumstances that could happen. The pandemic really was something that we had touched upon in our emergency strategic planning, but not to the level that we did. So that we experienced. So it's been quite interesting. We're very excited to be at this point where we release the census numbers. We will go over the CQR program. I know that's what everybody is online for. But I can't do any census presentation at this point without saying that our population is 331,449,281 people living in the United States. And so the most populous state, of course, was California. The least was Wyoming. The state that gained the most was Texas. And the fastest growing state was Utah. And then Puerto Rico, of course, lost population during the 2020 census compared to the 2010 census numbers. So we had also for housing units, 140,498,736 housing units. It's up from 6.7% from 2010 numbers. So just briefly about some of the statistics on group quarters. Now, understand that group quarters represents a large volume of different situations. Of course, college residence halls, treatment centers, correctional facilities, group homes, military, et cetera. But group quarters with college housing, that's the largest of it. There's 8.2 million approximately. So we want to be sure that we have these counts correct. That was our goal through the pandemic, with the enumerators, with the ever-changing rules of group quarters of when colleges could submit online administrative data for those students that were living on campus housing. And then we changed it to also, because of the fluid situation with different universities closing because of the pandemic, that we thought it was in the best interest to get even the students that were living in off-campus housing, who normally would respond as any other individual. So they were able to open that door to try to get an accurate count. So having said that, we feel confident in those numbers. We feel confident in the quality metrics that we had that took place throughout this, but there's always the opportunity to do better, and we want to be sure that these counts are accurate. And so what happens when there's a community, especially the counts around, of all the counts that I'm concerned about, it's the college campuses. And just because of the fluid situation, did we count those students in the right place? They needed to be counted in that college community. So what we have for everyone, for all entities, is called the Count Question Resolution Program. So we're going to go over what this is, what it is not, what are some of the requirements for it, and then what are the next steps? And then, of course, we'll open it for questions. So for Count Question Resolution, it's a mechanism for communities, states and communities to challenge their counts. So that is out there. But who is allowed to do that? It's the highest elected official within each community, within each state. And so what the Census Bureau is going to do, we're going to do an outreach to those people who are allowed to file a challenge with the Count Question Resolution, to challenge their housing units, to challenge the population counts, to challenge boundaries issues for reapportionment and redistricting, which is just critically important. And this is for group quarters, and it is for the census blocks. It can go down to just the smallest level of measurement. Now, what this is not going to do, and we'll jump ahead just for a second, that if a mayor or governor files a challenge with the support of universities and colleges, with the support of other entities that have concern, if a governor is saying, we feel that there's an undercount in the college town of whatever, and it includes these blocks, of course, it's going to need the help of that university. It's going to need the help of the partners that are associated with that. But we have to have the challenges coming in from the highest elected official. Otherwise, there is no way that this could be maintained. So as soon as those folks are sent the package of how you can file a CQR challenge, and this will be a nationwide mail distribution for these packages. And it's going to, I'll give you the dates in a little bit, but just so that you have it, so that if you are concerned, you can start figuring out who you need to contact to say, we want to help with this, or we feel that our community is undercounted, and these are the reasons why, so that you know when you should be reaching out to those people. So because of the pandemic, we had to revise the schedule, as we did with everything. The reason why the census, the actual enumeration for the census began a little bit later was for the safety of our communities, with having census takers go into those, the enumerators going into those communities, to making sure that our enumerators were safe, as well as the doors that they were knocking on when we began non-response follow-up operations. And so everything else then, it became a domino effect of when the data was released, et cetera, you can understand that if we extended the date for non-response follow-up, then we'd had to push everything else. The only thing that really wasn't pushed, which Census Bureau submitted a request to the administration, was to have those dates of the December 31st delayed a little bit. So that didn't happen, but we still are confident in the numbers. So what's happening right now with Count Question Resolution? Again, it's a time for the highest elected official. There are 3 types of challenges that are going to be accepted that people can file: housing units that will impact your population counts, boundary issues, and also the tabulation numbers. So in the fall of 2021, in the Federal Register notice that's already been published, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Beth some links and Janet some links that for the enormous amount of data that's out there right now, the press releases, the toolkits. I'm going to send you some specific links to Janet that she can distribute to the members that will show you, give you a lot more detail than what I'm able to provide within an hour. But one of them is the Federal Register notice, which has already been published. But we are adjusting the dates of that. Whenever you do any kind of a new census operation, we have to publish it in the Federal Register notice. It gives people time to respond with comments, what they see right about the program, what they see wrong about the program, and we take all those comments into consideration. So that is going to begin in the fall, right around the corner. And it's a 30-day period, and we have to let it go up until the very last day. We get the comments, we respond. In December, that's when the Census Bureau plans to officially notify tribal, state, local government officials that are eligible to file for a CQR case. And then in January, 1 month later, the Bureau will begin to accept those cases. In the packet that is sent out, we have an office that has stood up just to handle this. They will be assigned a personal representative. I worked CQR in 2010, and they will have that person's number, and they will be able to reach them at any time. Now, will the person that is not on the list, because we have them identify 1 or 2 names of people that can ask for inquiries, ask for the status of things, send the documentation, which is extensive. Will you be able to call? Will somebody partnering with the highest elected official be able to call us directly and say, or someone in the CQR program and say, what's the status? No, it will have to be whoever the highest elected official designates. But in these cases, I've seen as many as 10 partners, 10 partnering organizations team up to help the highest elected official submit the type of documentation is necessary and proof, because we do need to have proof of why you think either the boundary is wrong, the population count is wrong, et cetera, or that it's undercounted. Now, in this program is going to go on for a couple of years to allow people as much time as necessary to file. Believe it or not, I hate to even think about this, but to get everything in and so that we can process it and get it settled by 2023 so that we can begin the 2030 census. So anyway, the program will run through June 30th of 2023, where people can submit documentation for this. And in the packet that the highest elected official receives, which I know that they, in the past, they've shared that with their partners so that they can say, this is what we're up against. In the package, it will clearly outline what types of records where you're thinking that this is an undercount. Why do you think that is? And then what proof of documentation? I've seen it come in every different way. Electric bills, you know, they have, if you say, and these are just very broad and simple terms, if we say you have 20 housing units in an area in your state, and you say, no, we have 30 people that we have electricity accounts for. So that, you know, that it's that type of thing. Group quarters is going to be interesting because when all the administrative data, and they have, it's by university that submitted that. So they will have all that administrative data from their records, as well as comparing addresses for people that responded that were living in off campus, so that they can do a compare. And they've already done the unduplicate and things like that. But that's going to be an interesting process. It's just going to be much larger. So I know that universities have assisted the highest elected official with things in the past that they come in with. And you can, you know, the highest elected official will have people that are specialized at this. They pull in people that handled it before in 2010. They know how to do this because there's so much at stake. And so they are aware that this package is coming, and they are aware that this is something that they have the option of doing if they do feel that they have been undercounted, or if their boundaries are out of alignment, or if we've missed, you know, total new housing units, even after us going out and the enumerators looking at the master address file, doing cross-referencing to make sure that we picked up any new developments, et cetera. So on September, the last date that I have for you is September 30th of 2023. And that is when all the cases will be resolved. All the results will be given to the governmental units. Of course, this will happen on a flow basis, depending on how early challenges are filed. So what will this not do? And this is a question that we always get. This will not change the population counts that were delivered to the president on December 31st. It's not saying that your population counts won't change in your numbers at the state and local level, but that official total will not change. And again, I can send you links as to why. And also whoever the highest elected official appoints, that will be your point of contact to answer additional questions. I'm always here. Because there's, we're expecting quite a few number of cases this time around, just because of the situation with the pandemic, and especially concerns over college areas. So they've told me in 2 meetings that they are really, while I'm here and I can get some headway into some people that are working on count question resolution cases, I can't provide specifics. I can do general questions. We can have, again, this is the first meeting, very high level. You can see because of the dates, you're the first one that we've had a talk with about count question resolution. There will be more of these happening in the fall, webinars, and where people will really get into the weeds as that progresses. We're having it and keeping it at a high level to just give you an overview so that you can start thinking it through if you have concerns, because we don't know what comments are going to come from the Federal Register notice. And the program, while it's something we stand up every year, we have it all together, but we have all learned a valuable lesson of, like with the census. People say, what's scared? I get questions all the time. What are you most worried about this census? And I'd always say the unknown. Now, had I known we were going to be facing a pandemic, a citizenship question, a controversy, and a lot of other things, we just had quite a few things happen. So with this census, with count question resolution, we just don't know what's going to come in under the Federal Register notice comments. We don't know if there will be any changes to the program. It's a pretty tight set of requirements. I can't imagine there being too many changes, but you just never really know. And that's why we're keeping this conversation at a high level. We would love to be able to keep you informed as we move forward through 2021, especially in 2022, when we start the actual program and receiving the cases, and then always keeping you abreast of any changes that are happening. So I think I've talked for probably more than I intended without giving people a break for questions, but I will answer as many as I can. And if it's something that is a little bit more complex that we don't have decisions on yet, then I will certainly capture those questions and I will find the answers for you as they become available.
So before folks just unmute and start asking questions, if you could put, that you have a question in the chat. You don't have to say what the question is. You can just say, Larry Rosen, and I'll call on you. And that way it's a little bit more orderly. But I'd like to start with Caitlin Wilcox. She asked a question, a few chat, feeds back. Are documentation requirements available online as well, or just in the packet? And Caitlin, if you have the ability to unmic and you want to clarify yourself, that's fine. Or you can stick your hand up too. Larry, that works great. So whichever, Caitlin, you want to?
Yeah, sure. So I was just curious, as an institution who may choose to support the process, I'm curious what data we might start prepping if our elected official chooses to go down this path, knowing it's extensive, right? We want to be prepared and have enough lead time as we can.
So the list of requirements, first of all, let me just say, as part of your question, all of this will be put online when it's available. We're very transparent about that. You will be able to see it just like anybody else, the packet that's sent to the highest elected officials. What I was doing is that I started looking back at the 2010 information that's out there, and it's on the internet. And so I will put those links in the chat box. Like I said, there's nothing for 2020 yet because it's still a little soon, but I would encourage you to look at, even just Googling, I go on our census website and you can imagine all the stuff that's out there right now. And the links we get 25 links a day, and that's not an exaggeration of what's coming out and what's the latest talking, fact sheet, et cetera. But if you Google it, you can Google anything. Put count question resolution in there and put census, 2020 census above everything, and it'll take you directly. You'll see our links in the press for press kits, for just FAQs. And so that's the fastest way, but I also have a couple that I will put in the chat box for 2020 of what we have right now for you to Google on. There's a press release, there's decision memorandums, there's a study plan, which probably has, way too much technical information in it that is really internal, that would not help you, but it's a good read to get your feet under you to think about what could we be preparing. And again, it just depends on where you're coming from. College students, the administrators, we work with the big six all the time, and also other college registrars. I know that they have already been capturing. They have their submissions, they have them in multiple formats. They've eliminated all the PII, personally identify information from them, and just looking at the counts of what they submitted. So as they fine tune what is going to be accepted this time around, I will make sure that I alert Beth. We have an email distribution, a partner email distribution. When anything new goes out, it's posted and sent as an email to our partners. So I'll also provide that for you in case you wanted to sign up for that email list. Be aware that everything will go out to you. So you'll have to, filter through what you're interested in and what you're not. Count question resolution, those activities should be picking up by the end of this year.
Okay, thank you. Larry? You have to unmute.
Thank you. I just want to get some clarification to begin with, and that is two things you said that I just want to make sure I'm completely understanding. You have mentioned the highest elected official several times, and initially I thought you were referring specifically to the highest elected official of the governmental unit or the organization or what have you, that was going to issue a challenge. And then you started speaking about, at least you implied, talking about the governors of the states. And could you explain to me what both of those levels of quote unquote highest elected official, how they interact. Does, for example, does the highest elected official of a community, of a city, and the highest elected official of that state simultaneously have to be on board with this and have to be in communication, or not? Or some other level of communication or some level of agreement?
Yeah, and I'm sorry about the confusion. So it can be a governor, it can be a mayor, it can be, if it's a community, say Palm Springs, for example, it can be the mayor. What we hear in count question resolution, most of the cases that came in, they were not, of course, there were Chicago, you know, Mayor Rahm Emanuel submitted challenges. I can speak, I had Midwest and West Coast, so I know those challenges that came in. There are the cities that are usually undercounted that will come in, but it'll be at the mayor. It doesn't, is the mayor communicating with the governor? Is the mayor from, you know, Palm Springs, where there was absolutely an undercount there, but people bugged out. If you're in Palm Springs, you know, in March, you're usually getting ready to go up north, and people they would respond from their up north address, and we can't control that. So I know that there is some communication, of course, keeping abreast the state of which mayors are challenging to the governor, to the highest elected state official. But again, if it's in a community, a mayor can certainly present a challenge. And I know that most of them have been, they did in 2010, keep their governors informed. But that really is, I just knew just because of conversations I had with the people that I were monitoring. And I would expect that to happen as well in 2020.
Okay, so for the Census Bureau's purpose, if a mayor issues or creates a challenge, it is not necessary for the governor of that state to confirm that. Okay, I had a second question, and it also was something that I didn't quite understand, and maybe I misheard it, but I believe you said that the outcome of the CQR will not change the official population that has been released. So we're talking about right now the PL 94-171 population or anything that follows it. And if a community is successful in having a challenge that is accepted by the Census Bureau and changes are made, is it correct that the official census release for that community will not change, at least for the year 2020?
So this is always a mess of a question. And every time this is what we get the most questions about. So what they continue to say is that the official population counts that were delivered to the administration, as far as the nation as a whole, we will not be sending another round of population counts to the administration, changing that official number. Now, in documents, will the population counts change? Sure, they'll change at the state and local level, depending on what happens. If we find, you know, that we have missed, 50 housing units, those housing units have people living in them. So of course their population counts will be adjusted, but those final counts given to the president will not be. That's the line from the Census Bureau. And I continue to ask why. Give me an explanation as to why we cannot change those official counts. And I haven't really found something that I haven't gotten to the right person yet, but I'm going to try again. But I know that with the Census Bureau, there's probably volumes written about why, and I will find those volumes for you so that you can read, and then we can figure it out together. But the community counts will change, but those official counts will not be resubmitted.
Okay, and that's a very important question because, you know, for so many communities, the population counts directly translate into participation in a variety of state and federal funding activities. So, okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
And you know, it was interesting because when I worked on this in 2010, I was expecting you know, I mentioned Chicago before and their team of lawyers that we dealt with, and really, because we want to get this right, especially as a caseworker, when you can make certain assumptions. We don't want anybody to be undercounted, because what does that usually mean? It usually means that the communities that are marginalized or most in need that money. But what we can't do is that no matter how hard we've worked, and that's why partnerships are so important, we are never going to get a high response rate out of some communities for a variety of reasons. And we can't, if there's a housing unit complex or something like that, if people just not responding to the census, it's not a good reason. It's not something, because then we would do the whole census by administrative data, right? This is something that people have to respond to. So we try very hard. The caseworkers will try very hard. It's not just the caseworkers, they are just the liaisons. All of this information that comes in, it goes to our geography division, and tremendous amount of time is spent trying to figure out, did we miss people? Are they there? Can we adjust these numbers? Because that's what we want to do to get an accurate count. Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. The communities that I was surprised about during 2010, it wasn't the large cities. It was these smaller communities, and 50,000, having a population of 50,000 must be a benchmark, must be a requirement for some of this grant money, because we had oodles of challenges from them because they really wanted to get to that 50,000 mark. Because as you said, it opens the door to a lot more grant money and programs that are available to cities of population or town cities, a population of 50,000 or more. So we hear more from the smaller communities than we do the larger cities. At least that's what we did in 2010.
Are there other questions? So Kathy, I have a question. So you said that the process obviously would take a few years, and that by September 30th of 2023, the cases will be resolved. Then when a case is resolved, what is the community notified of? Okay, your count is this, or your next step is this. I mean, and what happens if they want to pursue it beyond that?
Yeah, and let me just clarify that we're not going to hold all the cases until September 2023. They're resolved as they come in, first decision to go out. People have a couple, not many, because it does take an enormous amount of work to put one of these cases together. They filed early, so that if they were given a decision that was not the one that they wanted, they went back in and filed another one through another elected official. So it's just a matter of waiting. I mean, at some point, the Census Bureau just isn't going to say yes or no. It's going to, especially if it's no. They'll give you documentation as to why. So if you submit a bunch that it was undercounted in this area, and the maps come in and the addresses are there, they know which households, which block down to the block level, which kind of responses came in. They know per housing unit, but they're certainly not going to be able to release that. That's very protected data that only a few have access to. So it's just a matter of what the decision is and what they tell you of why they've given you that decision, and that will inform your next steps. Unfortunately, most of the time it's a full stop if the highest elected official and team, because let's face it, the highest elected official on the form is not doing the work; it's the team. But just to try to figure out, as a team, have we covered all of our bases? Is there another avenue that if the Census Bureau says, no, we've we've looked at these counts, we've looked at these areas, we've looked at the blocks, we've looked at the boundaries, and here's why we think that we were effective in doing that. But if there's something else that could be submitted, then, you know, this is your opportunity to do it. And you would still have more time by the end of the 2023 September deadline to submit.
Can you give us a sense? You say it's a lot of work, and I can understand that. Can you give us a sense for like what's involved in putting a CQR together?
So I'll have to pull back because nothing, so here's where I might get in a little bit of trouble, and I really don't want to get in trouble, but I want to give you as much information as I can, because they told me this is high level. Everybody's talking about this as high level. Okay, that's all well and good, but people have questions like that. What I saw that came in during 2010, the governor's office, the highest elected official, they have, you'd be shocked at the maps that they have, again, using utility bills, and they will do an overlay. They're geographers. They do a tremendous overlay. They submit through, because they have electric bills, they can download, and I've seen massive address listings come in that identify every housing unit. And that we do have, you know, as again, 1,000 housing units here, you only recorded 800, but we have these addresses that are receiving active electrical, function in their home. You know, so then you have to go through, and it's challenging, and it's a hard pill to swallow, that in Palm Springs, and I keep going back to them because it's those snowbird communities that have the opposite effect, that the people in Palm Springs, they were undercounted, and everybody knew they were undercounted. There was nothing the Census Bureau could do about it because everybody bugged out and they went up north and they responded from their northern address. And it was sorrowful because the rules are that we encourage people to file and to respond of where they live the majority of the time, but we're not the police of going out and saying, you know, we know that you lived here 7 months out of the year, and this is where you should have responded from. We can't police that. They have a choice. And the majority of them in the Palm Springs case, they responded from their second home that was up north, and that's where they determined they lived the largest period of the time throughout the year. But then again, Palm Springs came in under a mark, and a lot of federal funding was they did not have access to that. So those are some of the challenges. But again, it's maps. The communities, they know their geography. If I called somebody and said, what is highest elected official, and said, what is your housing unit count in this area? They would put somebody on the phone that knows that instantly. They have people that monitor this, and it's not just for the census. It's when you think about, in case there is a tragedy or, fires in California, earthquakes, when, 3 weeks before non-response was done and results even prior to that, we had a whole town that was just decimated because of an earthquake. But people live there. They live there the majority of the time. So what do you do about that? So again, we go to the highest elected official. They direct us to the office of the geographer, and they have all this information that they can come in. College campuses, keep going back to college campuses because of, ITGA, they have all those records. They know how many kids were living in those dorms. What we're going to have a problem with is, and we run into this every year, the students need to be counted on the campus, not in the homes of their parents or where they live, parent or parents, brothers, sisters. They need to be counted on that college campus because they need the funds. So there's just so many, and as we continue through this year, especially in January of 2022, you'll see more, an extensive list, a lot more information than I'm providing you today, because it will be solidified. The decisions will be made. So that's a little bit of background from 2010. I'm expecting it to be the same in 2020. So we'll see what happens. We're all waiting, even inside Census, outside of CQR program, we're waiting.
Excellent. Thank you. And Steve Patterson, who is the highest level official in Athens, Ohio, he's had his hand up for a while as well. Steve, please.
Thank you, Janet. And Kathy, thank you. You know, I really appreciate all the pivots that the Census Bureau has had to make this past year, you know, and for at least engaging with not just ITGA, but also with the National League of Cities University Communities Council. I'm just kind of free associating to some degree, and I appreciate your answer to Larry. And I should point out that we have Catherine Lemming, who's also on this webinar representing, she is the communications and marketing individual manager for the Ohio Mayor's Alliance, which represents the 30 largest cities in the state of Ohio. And I'm just curious, I would contend that hard to reach areas, hard to count areas, as well as university communities, college towns, you know, have real significant challenges, had real significant challenges with the census. And granted, the state of Ohio has, you know, 14 state universities and 24 regional campuses and over 50 private colleges and universities. Is it, you mentioned the highest, and I heard what Larry heard, and I'm glad you had clarification on that. When it comes to municipalities, I heard governor too. However, do you see any advantage or not if there was a large coalition of mayors from college towns across the state to also have the governor weigh in and say, yes, looking at this data, I agree with them? And how is that an advantage or is it not an advantage? Should it be one-offs, or is there an advantage to have a coalition of university communities coming together saying, yes, we've lost? And I can see a governor going, yeah, this is important because I'm looking at population loss in my state that could be unfortunately misrepresented because people have gone elsewhere.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I can't give you an answer of what would be more advantageous, to go as a larger coalition or break it into different challenges. I think that when the kits are released, there will be information numbers on there. That is going to be a question for the CQR specialist. I think that what they will say is that part of it doesn't matter, we're all about the data. It goes back to the data. Is something going to have more of an impact because it's coming from a group that is all in agreement of this, or different ones? If the data is submitted, if the records are submitted, to me it's equal. But that is going to be a question, and I've captured that because I want to forward it to the CQR office. Those are going to be questions that, again, are going to be a little bit more in the weeds than what I'm able to do right now. And they would be the ones that they may offer you a recommendation on that, but I can't say for sure that they will. But they can certainly give you their opinion. But again, it's not, so we have to make sure that we focus this. Yes, we work for the Census Bureau, and we have to hold that in the front. I mean, the posted notes and the things that we always have to remember based on our own personal opinions. So while there's, we try to be incredibly transparent, and we feel that we really have been. The people on the inside, the people that are doing this for 3 and 4 censuses, and how we've just committed our careers to this because it's so important. We want to give you absolutely transparent and truthful answers, and try to leave personal opinions out and answer it best on what is coming from the Census Bureau. And I don't want to make any any assumptions on that. So I know that I'm going to turn that over to the SMEs at the CQR program.
Great.
That makes sense?
It does. Thank you.
So we also have a question from Min, who's, and thank you, Min, for identifying yourself as a reporter from WPSU Public Radio and State College, home to Penn State, in case we did not know that. So her question is, would the CQR cases use the data that are postmarked at a certain time, like the information that were true on Census Day in 2020, or would the cases be built upon the latest available data?
It's going to be at a date. There's going to be a cutoff point, and we're going to go by a date. That's what we did in 2010. Now, all I can say is what we did in 2020 or 2010. In 2020, okay, so first of all, I have to say, because it's just what we have to do. Any types of reporters, I can refer you to our public information office. Those are the folks that have the most up-to-date and detailed information for you. But what I can tell you is that this question, again, it's a little bit deeper than what has been decided yet, but as it comes out in 2010, that's the only thing I can reference, that it was by postmark. We've pushed out the dates on the CQR program right now to allow for the delays that we had incurred in the beginning. And so the dates I gave you are the modified dates. But again, as CQR continues, as we go through in December and January, February, all along, any updates and things like that will be posted. So, you know, what is decided right now, because especially because this is so new, you know, that we're going to wait to see how this pans out, because not all the decisions are absolutely written in stone, and you know, they will continue throughout you know, the life cycle of the program.
Thank you. I have a question, and this is a weeds question that I know you cannot most likely answer, but maybe you could direct me generally. So one of the questions that I have is, when the census made the opportunity for colleges, universities to submit their off-campus student information of names and addresses, you know, we submitted a huge data file. I was the one that physically hit submit. I got the response back. I know it went through. But what I don't know, and I did inquire with somebody, is how many of those were accepted. Now, I understand they can't tell me which ones, but what I'm asking for is clarification. I submitted 17,559. I'd like to at least have a sense, as I work with my city colleagues, as to how many of those, just the number, were accepted, similar to reporting a census tract number. When I asked, I got the response that it's protected under Title 13, but Title 13 protects identifiable information. And they also had referenced that their communications department had said that. Well, that's not legal. So who could you point me in the direction to just get a little bit better definition? Because I would imagine, should we pursue the process, that's something that would have to be vetted anyway. So I'm just trying to put some upfront work in on that. So who could provide an answer or a different response in terms of just the number that was accepted?
So let me make a phone call after this meeting to the GQ office. This was one of my concerns. In anything like this, you're always going to have an overlap of questions that, whether it's CQR, this is definitely in the GQ office. But let me make a call to my contact over there and explain the situation. And I'll get back to you by the end of the day, Janet, with their name. I just need to. I mean, I absolutely understand. I hear it all the time. Of these types of questions, but I want to get you out of the circular motion sometime of the standard talking points of the Census Bureau, and let me see if I can get somebody to answer that specific question for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So Heather's asking a question that probably a lot of us have on our mind, and Heather, thank you very much for posing it. How do you weigh whether or not the CQR process is worth it? I mean, I have to be honest, if it's not going to count, I'm like, okay, because I'm in a community that's teetering on 50 and that's what we want. And so if it's not going to count, I'm kind of wondering. So I appreciate, what she's saying. When is it worth the effort? Or is this really a rhetorical question? So she poses that to you.
Yeah.
Oh, and then is there a fee for the process as well?
No, there's not a fee for the process because the fee comes by your hard work. And this is a question that always comes up, and nobody knows the answer to it because that's up to each community to decide. Is this going to be the work level that we're going to have to put into this? And again, nobody will really know until you see what the package is and what types of documentation that they are requesting. And so that's an analysis that's going to have to be done at the community level of, if we're fighting for, the 50,000 and we're only 500 short. I don't know the answer to that. Is it worth it? Just depends on, everybody's so different, because we have major cities, Miami-Dade, Chicago, LA, and then we have smaller entities. So that's a decision that unfortunately is going to have to be left up to the organizations that are going to be supporting the effort. And a lot of thought goes into that because it does take time. When it hits the Census Bureau, we'll spend as much time as we have to on it. And it takes an incredible amount of effort, not only to prepare the challenge, but also to research it. And the research is incredibly thorough. We have so many oversight committees between the Government Accounting Office and the Inspector General's Office. And those are, along with a lot of our Census Advisory Task Force and all the boards that we have to report out to on every single operation that we do for full transparency. And that is really there to protect us because we are proud of the work that we do. And we put an incredible amount of effort into it because, as I said, we want to come to the truth. And we want to get as many people included in this because there is so much at stake, which was why the partnership program, every single census, we just try so hard to get to the communities that we know are undercounted traditionally. I mean, young children, people forget to leave to count their young children. It's one of the largest groups, and hundreds of millions of dollars are lost over the decade. It's just mind-boggling. And so trying to figure out, I've just lost my focus. I started getting impassioned about the groups that I know we work so hard to get, but at the end of the CQR process, first of all, at the end of the census, when we have tried so hard to get people, to make them aware of the census, the importance of it, to respond. Then we get through the CQR challenges when we have to hear no, or we hear that a community of the 50,000 mark didn't get the population count that they needed for these grants. It's heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. So, going back to the question of, I think the original question that was on there was, is it worth it? Or correct me if I've just distracted myself. Again, it's just up to the communities. And GQ, again, I'll see if I can find out some answers for you, because it seems to me, and I don't know, I'm hesitating because I don't know what the laws are with GQ. What you described, it doesn't sound like there's any PII in there. If a university submitted 20,000 records, how many were accepted? It seems like a pretty obvious question. But let me figure out, because the questions that are so obvious that even it puts me back on my heels of, why didn't they give you an answer? And I voice that in a pretty egotistical way. And then I get on the phone with the SME from GQ and they say, oh, well, this is why, and thank you very much.
And thank you for
your opinion on that.
Yeah, thank you for looking into it. Now we're at time. I've seen that we've lost a couple of people, and that's fine, but we do have a couple more questions. So Larry, would you like to ask another question?
Yeah, this is very brief. Because of the special relationship that the state data center programs and the federal state cooperative programs have as sort of the liaison between the states and the Census Bureau, do they have any role to play in this process? Or even better, do they have any special role to play in this process? And does their, well, I'll leave it at that. You can.
Yeah, SDCs they're very interested in this program. But what their role is, how they inform their constituents, what role they play, I'm really not quite sure. I just know that is one group that they cannot wait to get their teeth into this program to see what it's about. So I'm imagining that they are going to be, you know, they're there to help their communities. But I will see if I can find, there's got to be a latest link on SDCs. I'll make a call to see what their active role is, and is there anything on the Census Bureau website that defines that?
Yeah. Okay, that'd be great.
And then Tom Fehrenbach had a question. He said, so the package is still expected to be released, sent to the highest elected officials in the fall. I think you said they were getting the letters in December, with the CQR forms available to be filed beginning of January 2022. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've revised those dates, and that's where they stand right now. Having learned, could they be pushed? They can be pushed. Will they be? I hope not. Everybody hopes not. But again, because we're so new into this, if there are, a press release will go out, and just continue to monitor the CQR website that is on the 2020 SharePoint site.
Thank you. And then Paul is asking a follow-up question to that. Does the packet itself include the documents needed to ask specific questions as to how enumeration totals were tabulated?
Let me just reread this. Does the packet include the documents needed to ask? I will have to wait to see what that package is going to include. I don't know how much information will be given. I mean, there will be an explanation as to how we've tabulated this, how we've researched this, whether it's a yes or a no, and this is what we found. But I don't know how detailed it's going to be.
And Paul, please go ahead and unmic and unmute yourself and clarify your question if you want.
Sure, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
So real quick, Catherine, just as an example, I'm using the GIS data that's been downloaded. I looked at the census place data shapefiles for the state of Ohio, and the count for our community of Athens is accurate to what's being distributed on the QuickFacts site, et cetera, for census. However, when I take the block data and create a file just of the blocks for the city of Athens, and when I summarize the population counts in there, it's about 2,500 or 3,000 less than what the place data is calculating. And when I look deeply or kind of screen some of those blocks, there's some, for example, we're College Town. There's an apartment complex that has about 750 beds in it, typically occupied at 95%. And that block says the population count is 0. So I'm wondering if they collect that data from another method and therefore it's not being reported in the block. So those are the type of questions I'm trying to understand these discrepancies to see if we think there's an error.
Yeah, so these are all excellent questions. And if anybody was asking what type of documentation is used or how you can do compare, Paul just gave an excellent example of, you know, with shape files and things like that we have. So that question, I'm going to have to defer that as we get further in the process to one of our geography experts through the SMEs of the CQR program. I can't give you an explanation as to or any answers as to how they will proceed and what their determinations in their research, how they will effectively navigate that and what they will count and what they won't. So again, once we see, there will be a CQR number once the program is stood up and the numbers are released, the telephone numbers, CQR will be taking all of those calls that are really a little bit more detailed than what we can go into because of what has been decided at a high level meeting. So I'm sorry.
So I guess what I'm asking is that the process I would ask those questions is through that CQR number?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
perfect.
I'm going to, you know, we can have additional meetings. And what I would like to do, because I wanted to pull in the branch chief from the CQR program on this meeting. And they said they were not at the point yet, which is not unusual at all, because when we start thinking about high level, we still, no matter how high level we get, our mind always goes to the more detailed questions that are coming in. But what they told me is that they would certainly be available for future meetings as this progresses. And that's what typically happens. I can do a high level meeting, but I think that the meat of the conversations really needs the branch chief or the ADC or one of the execs to join one of these calls. And that's what I would hope if you want to have another call, Janet and Beth, down the road when more things have been decided and released, that I could certainly pull in somebody from at that level to answer these specific questions.
No, I think that sounds wonderful. I mean, these are the folks on this call who were eager enough to learn information, you know, sooner rather than later. And knowing who's on this, and I'm familiar with a lot of the communities, I think they're going to have more questions as we move forward. So we are at time, a little bit over, and thank you for everyone who stayed. And Kathy, special thanks to you for just being such a great supporter of getting information to the ITGA members about the census. You've been doing it now for 2 years, and we really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And if I could just say one other thing. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll say it when you get through. Go ahead.
As we continue, you know, the Census Bureau will be publishing webinars to capture as many people as we can. They will be some will be for press only, some will be for, the majority of them are for our partners and anybody that wants to know more information. I did hear that a webinar for CQR from the Bureau is going to be coming out. It's just a little bit too soon, but again, monitoring that website will give you all the latest information.
Oh, that would be great. Beth?
Catherine, thank you so much. I hope that your plans for September come to fruition and that we really appreciate your time. And like Janet said, you've been with us for a long time. So we appreciate your hand holding as we go through this process together. Thank you so much for your time today. And I did notice that you did get your video on. So you didn't just have to have that number, you had that link. So thank you so much. Janet, thank you for moderating this conversation, facilitating. You did an absolutely fabulous job, and we really appreciate everybody that joined us.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you. We'll get you the information as we have it. And so thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Much appreciated. Bye-bye.
Bye.